Hey guys, my name is Mark Miller. I'm a Lucene Solar committer and done a lot of work on SolrCloud. And this talk is basically just going to be a discussion with a few guys here that have already started working with SolrCloud. Hopefully, they can give you some insight into some of the issues they faced or some of the reasons they chose SolrCloud and maybe convince you to do it too. I'd like to start just by seeing how many people use or have used Solar here, just to get an idea of the audience. Anyone use SolrCloud yet? A couple? Okay, cool. So we'll go right to the panel here. Quick introductions. We've got Ricardo on the end here, right?
Nope.
No, sorry, on this end. Then we've got Roberto there, kind of in the middle, not going in order. Tim right here, and Alex on the far end. Hey guys, thanks. So basically, I'm just going to start. I'm going to ask a quick question and run down the line. Each person can take a little while and answer. So starting question is, a brief introduction about yourself and what you're up to, your role in deploying SolrCloud, what the use case is, why you're using SolrCloud, describe your development environment a little bit and where you are in the process. Basically just tell us a little bit about where you're up to and what your role in what you're doing is. We'll start at this end.
Okay, so my name is Ricardo. I'm currently an independent developer, but most of the stuff that I'm going to discuss is actually been done in a project working for Dutchess Group, which is the same company as Tim. What happened is that in the past 2 years, I've been lead developer on a project that involved building a data processing pipeline for a big telco company with the goal of providing this company with insights and timely access, near real-time access if possible, to the most relevant conversation that were happening on the internet about their brands. And basically, we realized that we had time, resources, and constraints similar to this. So we wanted to leverage our knowledge of Ruby, which is the main language that we used at the time, to push that around. But when it came to figuring out what's the best way to process the text related data, we did a little survey, and we analyzed a few of the options available out there. And Solar, which at the time was Solar free, emerged as the best fit for doing that job. Then time goes on, the project evolves, and we figured out that we would have needed some of the features that were going to be made available by Solar 4 and SolrCloud, namely real-time and transparent sharding, and distributing searches and so forth. So we decided to switch to the dev branch, and we were lucky enough that the actual beta of SolrCloud came out just in time to make it to the development of to the deployment of the final project. So this is the short story. On to Tim, I guess.
So I'm Tim Potter. I work at Dutchess Group, and I'm pretty much the lead as far as search technology goes. So we are pretty close to going to production with SolrCloud. We're currently in production on a Solar 4 hybrid from DataStax. And our application is essentially the socialbusinessindex.com is the front end, and it's a series of SaaS applications where we compute analytics around brands in social. So most of our messages come from Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and that kind of thing. So when I don't know if you all do, but if you happen to tweet in response to a brand of your favorite or something, like when the guy skydived from space for Red Bull, all that interaction produces a bunch of analytics in our platform. Solar is a big piece of that, and SolrCloud is just a cornerstone of our application. We have our largest index has like 300 million documents and is a big SolrCloud cluster. And we are sort of your typical big data shop, mostly Java guys. We do a lot with Pig and Hadoop as well, and some Hive. But so as far as all Solar goes, we're all Java, and we run in the cloud, Amazon Cloud.
So Roberto Mazziero worked for ADP. ADP is a payroll company, right? The company that runs HR. So about half a billion clients. So pretty large company. We pay 1 in every 6 employees in U.S. So lots of data. See, data is our middle name, right? Automatic data processing. So we deal with a lot of that. And the project, the use case we have is not as fancy as yours. It doesn't involve much of the social or analytics. It's just search, right, on this enormous amount of data. And the fact that ADP is a software as a service, so everything we do is in the cloud. I mean, my CIO say that we invented the cloud before it was called the cloud. So the idea is that we have 180 systems, right, that sit in the cloud, and that we provide that through a SaaS. And up until now, our search process was very narrow to each one of those modules, right? There was no enterprise-wide search. So we started the project on ADP Labs, which is the area of ADP that I run, to decide what tool set and what kind of service we wanted to put for search. We look at a bunch of options, right? A lot of the commercial packages out there from IBM and DECA and others, right? Fast. And decided to go with Solr, I think for several reasons. The price is right was one of them, but not the major one. I think the fact that it had all the features we're looking for and was simple. I mean, a lot of the commercial tools out there, they come with a lot of features that were not needed, a lot of theft, and I think also the being open source, having the chance to influence the roadmap, which you would think with a commercial, you're paying a couple of $1 million for a commercial product, you will have a large influence now. So in here, it's awesome to be able to put something in Jira and say, I think this is important. We just did a couple of those, right? We wanted to have to be able to see what key you would shard based on, and for us that's very important. Multi-tenancy for ADP is key, right? So we don't want Coca-Cola seeing Pepsi-Cola rice data. That would be pretty bad. So the idea of being able to separate using sharding, right? Separate the tenants, and that pay off, in other ways as well, since we are now able to route a query to a particular shard because we know the data is in that shard, right? So instead of having to kind of federate the query across all shards, which it's fast, but you're paying the price for nothing, right? If I know that all the data for a tenant is here, I just go there and get it. Where are we in the process? We're piloting this. The idea is to move this across all of our client base, probably in the next 12 months or so. So have the millions of users through mobile, web, tablet coming in, and we have in our database around 60 million employees, and then all the ancillary documents around them. So it's pretty interesting to see when this thing scales. And that's the other thing. I mean, we want to sustain 100 QPS, and we put that on the table and working with LucidWorks and say, how much hardware I need to sustain that with this amount of data and this and that, and also with the other vendors, and the difference was huge, right? I mean, we own our own data centers. We develop it on Amazon, but we host our production on our own data centers. So it's important to know the cost of hosting for us. And Solr could do a large volume of queries per second and a large volume of documents being indexed, per whatever 5 minutes, which is our cycle of crawling. Whereas for the others, we have to put a lot of hardware on it. Not that I don't like. I think IBM have an awesome product, right? It also based on Lucene and have all the analytics on top of it. But it was just too much for the first step on our project.
Okay, thanks. I'm Alex Stubbs. It says I'm a freelancer, but I wear many hats, and I think Ricardo does as well, actually. We basically get to deal with a lot of applications that are whole stack. So starting off from, let's say, back-end text search indexing, all the way, let's say, to the user interface. I myself tend to favor Ruby, so Ruby on Rails applications. How many of you do work with Ruby, by the way? Put your hands up. Yeah,
Two.
heard of? Yeah, a little bit more. Okay, good. I'm a little bit different in this particular panel because I think I've actually been working on 2 projects recently. One of them is based on Elasticsearch, and that's specifically because it requires making use of the percolator features that Elasticsearch has. That's a specific use case. Solr and SolrCloud, however, is the right tool to use for the other project I'm working on. It's an education establishment online collaboration platform in the UK. It's got about 180,000 people signed up. They don't necessarily produce a lot of documents, but they do produce some crazy ones. And I think that's where one of the problems comes from, that we had to face came from. The other bit was around the fact that it being an education establishment, the end client is effectively very concerned about security of data, about where the hosting is taking place. So for example, ISO 27001 accreditation is an important thing for them. And this is where SolrCloud really comes in to deliver something that's easier to maintain than before. I specifically say before because the application's been live for the last 3 years, but it was originally delivered with Sphinx. So thinking Sphinx as a search engine. The fact that it wasn't back then a distributed system was a real pain in the ass. The fact that we've been able now to transition to SolrCloud has made a lot of our maintenance much easier. So right now, we're in a stage where we've achieved feature parity with what was before, and we're moving on to some of the nicer things that we can work with. So for example, a lot more on the faceting side of things. So yes, that's about it, I think.
Great, thanks, guys. So both Roberto and Alex touched a little on this, but I'd like each of you to take 30 seconds to a minute to go a little deeper into what other technologies you evaluated before you chose SolrCloud and why you ended up using SolrCloud for the particular project you're working on. I guess we'll start here again.
Okay, being the application developed in Ruby as well, so we went more or less through the same question about shall we just keep it simple and do it in Sphinx. Back at the time, it was still a viable option, but we can quickly discarded that because of the other requirements. Due to the type of application that we were developing, which is a data processing pipeline, we wanted to leverage a bit of parallel processing as well. So we looked into React, for example, that has a React search that comes with it, and we looked at MongoDB with full text search and trying to figure out if that was going to be enough. But none of them were given the same sort of freedom and flexibility that Solr does, essentially, especially when it comes down to faceting, for example, or for the more advanced features. So that's the sort of benchmark that we did at the beginning. Yes, Solr just emerged as a more complete one for our needs.
Tim?
I'm sort of a Solr bigot, so I kind of started with Solr. And work my way backwards. But we at Dacia's Group also run Cassandra. We're big consumers of Cassandra in a number of areas. So we actually started with the Solr 4 built on top of Cassandra replication, which is what we have in production now. And it works well. We just decided, our kind of move towards SolrCloud is actually driven by what we originally thought was a really nice marriage actually isn't necessary. So especially with the SolrCloud features, that it's better to just be native Solr, and then use Cassandra for other things in our stack. So there's really was no true motivation or true reason technically to have them like that for us. But like I said, I actually started with Solr always and worked my way back, sort of, figuring out the means to justify my ends where I wanted to be.
Roberto?
Yeah, as I said before, we look at a bunch of vendors, and I can go through a couple of them. So we look at Fast. I mean, Microsoft is our client. We love them, but again, I mean, I think the problem there is the whole stack, right? The fact that you need to run on, since they acquire Fast, they move out of Linux support, right? So you need to run on Microsoft Windows, and that's something that we don't like to do much on the data center. So and then it's tied to SharePoint, right? So SharePoint, it comes with the whole ecosystem of SharePoint. So it was just not a good fit because of that, right? As I said, we look at IBM, and I would say IBM probably have the best product. It is based on Lucene, so it makes sense. It leverages the same kind of core. And they add a lot of their neat, development and research that they do, right? So they have NLP pretty developed, right? So you can do natural language queries. They have their whole, Hadoop-based, analytics that you can power through search. So search, we decided day one that our project would be search for navigation, right, to get to a place. So, and one of the variants, we discussed this with Mark when he visited us, is that every query you do, we fire two queries at the same time, one on our metadata and one on the raw data itself. So we added semantic to the search, right? So the idea is that our user can go in and say, fire John. And it will understand that fire is a verb, and a verb that relates to a document or object of type employee. Do I have an employee called John? Yes. I put the two together, and that becomes an action, right? So the idea is that search, more than finding something, is an actionable artifact, right? So, and you could say hire, and then it understands that it's a candidate, not an employee, right? And anything else, right? Approve time, and it understands all the pending time sheet approvals that needs to be performed. So we use Solr for all of that, right? So we have two separate indexes, one metadata that have all of those terms and all that relationship between terms and synonyms, terms and document types, and then that enriches the predicate that we fire against the raw Solr itself, right? The data, where we change relevances, we do a kind of black magic there to get to the results, the most relevant results that we wanted. So, and that's the thing. We try to do that with some of the other tools. I mean, they come with great capability, but if you work the way they work, right? If you want to do something a little different than what we wanted it, which was, let's not do NLP, let's just do text search, but let's add this semantic capability to the search that our users, I think, will really like and be enchanted with. And one of the pilots that we've been running is phenomenal to see. I mean, they have, as a typical system, right, they have the menu on one side and the search on the other side. And, the menu is on the left because it's the most used one, right? So you go in and you select what you want and blah, blah, blah. It's flipping. So probably in the next version, menu will be maybe something that they can find on an obscure place of the system. And search becomes the primary navigation, right? So when selling to the execs, I said, before there was, before on the internet, at the beginning of the internet, you knew all the www, right? So there was 4 or 5, AOL and this and that. It was not even Google, right? It was whatever was the name of the search back in the days, Northwind, I think it was. And then there was Google. So we're doing the same with our systems, right? I mean, we have so many modules today that a menu can have, 1,000, 13,000, depending on how many tasks you are authorized. So it's much more easier to just go in and say what you want in whatever language we have. You are. We support multilingual, and we understand your authorization. So we will kind of cut you to only what you can do. So IBM, great product. If it works the way you work, fast. I told you already. And DECA was very, kind of focused on the financials, and it's not what we wanted it. So Solr seemed to be a great choice.
Right. So on our end, we started off from the requirements that we were kind of facing in terms of pain points for the previous application. Those were specifically around maintenance. What was happening was that performance was starting to become an issue, and we weren't able to solve all those performance problems by effectively upgrading, by adding new features to the application even. So we were faced with having a hosting provider that was accredited but didn't really know what they were doing, and therefore had to find something that was mature and stable enough that would deliver a sufficiently, let's say, a sufficiently attuned service in terms of search for what we wanted to do. Let me explain. So Elasticsearch, yeah, great, new kid on the block, whatever you heard earlier. So, totally agree that it's got its niche. In this particular case, it wouldn't have been the right tool, I don't think, because it was outside of the comfort zone of the hosting provider. It was outside the comfort zone of actually finding people to work with it. So at least in the Ruby community, there are a lot of tools to work with Solr. I can say that there are fewer tools to work with Elasticsearch. So at least from a tooling perspective, it pushes you down one path. Certainly by taking out the previous already existing DSL, which was Things, and replacing it with something that felt close was a bonus for us. A bonus for us, we're looking at what did we have available to replace it with in terms of DSL. Well, actually, it turned out there was Sunspot for Solr. So that was a very nice and easy transition to on the way to achieving parity. So the last bit around hosting providers is an interesting question, actually, because what was happening was that the application was being served from 4 distinct, let's say, servers. 2 different locations in the UK, 2 different data centers. The sharding that was taking place between the applications was a bit weird. Okay, sometimes the client gets what they want, really. Can't do much about that. But we didn't have a specific need for having anything more than, I'd say, master-slave. Except that, in case that things did fail over, which they did sometimes, we'd run into issues with having to keep up with a MySQL database, which was at the time, a master replication, and data issues, and then the index on the server side now was much easier to be done than, let's say, on the Sphinx side. I think I'm going around in circles. But I think at the end of the day, our choice was around what was a better fit for the application, for the client needs, for the hosting requirements, for the flexibility allowed our client to have with respect to keeping this product alive for the next couple of years.
Great, thanks, guys. I'm going to let you guys ask some questions in a bit, just to warn you. So if you have any thoughts, you can prepare your questions ahead of time. So next thing I'm going to ask is if you could talk a little bit about your experience using SolrCloud. Any pain points? Any points that were like, oh, this is great, this was easy? Anything that that's missing that you're waiting for that you'd like to finish some stuff? I know you've touched on that a little already, but maybe you can expand a little. Let's start here again.
Okay, let's try. Okay, pain points. The first one came from the fact that probably we are using Solr and SolrCloud not really in an orthodox way. So we're using it mainly for doing data processing rather than queuing data out. We're also doing searches, of course. But for example, we are using Solr to power Attack Cloud, which is a representation of the data that we indexed from the net. And what we found out at the beginning, when we were using Solr version 3, was that we quickly hit the limit of the number of items that you can actually represent before Solr starts crashing, essentially. So at that point, we transitioned to actually indexing one language per core. At that point, the dictionary was much smaller, and we could afford that, and we didn't have any problem after that ever since. I would like to run the same kind of test now that Solr 4 is out, see that if we could actually merge everything. I never had the chance to do that, but it would be an interesting test to see if it can actually represent a dictionary of several millions of terms. Other pain points, I can't really think of any, actually. About the nice things, though, one thing I didn't expect was the easy of working with the APIs for managing the Solr itself. So the core API, the collect API, we tend to do quite a lot of that from the client application itself. So we generate core on when a new core is needed, we generate a collection at configuration time of the application itself. And doing that is extremely easy and convenient using just the API. Yeah, those would be two examples of one pain point and one easy point. If I can think of any other, I will probably grab the mic later.
So our experience with SolrCloud so far has been really positive. So one of our big indexes, we were trying to do field collapsing, and that actually didn't perform. It did work, it just didn't perform like we needed, so we ended up actually using some of the partial document update stuff, and the atomic updates Yannick presented look awesome. So because that I think that's a really big feature to be able to update. Like we will update like the like count of a tweet as that goes up, as people like that. So that's really good. So it's been basically positive. One kind of lesson learned for people starting out is it's easy to kind of try to outthink SolrCloud and just kind of let it work. Start up your Solr servers, shards and replicas, and you do have to set the number of shards you want. And SolrCloud and Zookeeper will figure the rest out, right? It'll make sure that node number 5 doesn't get a replica and a leader of the same shard. It'll figure that out. So you don't have to think about it so much. It does a lot of that, and we tried to outsmart it. For example, if you're doing high volume indexing, SolrCloud now has a cloud Solr server in SolrJ. There was a lot of Solrs in there. What this does is it actually talks to Zookeeper to find out kind of the topography of your cluster. And when you send a doc in, it says, okay, you're doing an update. Let me send that to the appropriate shard leader. It does that kind of thing. So just a lesson learned. We tried to outsmart it and think we were smarter, and we found that it's just easier to just kind of go with the flow, start up your servers, and don't try to outthink it. We do run Zookeeper on a Zookeeper ensemble outside of Solr, or you can run it inside. And then one of the limitations I hear a lot about is, you have to pick your shard count up front. Not really a big issue for us because we can re-index even our 300 million doc index in our infrastructure on like a different staging cluster or something in like 12 hours. So we can, if we need to change our shard count, yeah, it would be nice to be able to split shards automatically and all that thing, but I actually think that's kind of an overblown limitation in the sense that, servers are relatively cheap, and it's pretty easy to spin up another cluster, re-index, and swap over. I mean, that's what search teams have been doing for a long time. So that's how we've approached that limitation. Granted, it'll get better, but I don't think that's going to, I wouldn't let that stop you, so to speak.
Kind of the same things, right? I mean, I think it's been positive. I'll see when we have all clients in there, 500,000 of them using it. But I think it's this far pretty positive experiences, other than the bugs you left there. Just kidding. I mean, the highlighting was a little bit of a pain on the array. That is now, because obviously highlighting is pretty important if you're doing just conventional, just search, text search. So that it's fixed now. So that was a good one. I think data import handler, we use that a lot. So I mean, I think it's it needs to catch up with the rest of the Solr family, right? And kind of be able to understand the same thing I said on the query, that if I know data is on this shard, just move to that shard and all that. I think replication, I was expecting a little more. I mean, I know we discussed this briefly, right? I mean, maybe give us knobs to say, I want, full consistency on this particular replica of the shard, but I want eventual consistency on that replica of the shard, right? So if I have a second data center like we do, and I want to have, one replica local just for high availability, so if I lose one machine, the thing is still running, but I want a replica in a data center too, don't do that today. It will just come to a halt basically if you go over the WAN to do replication. So it would be nice to have kind of those knobs to say this replica, keep it as Solr is today, full consistency, beautiful thing. But put that one on an eventual one. So if I lose an entire data center, which is possible, right? I can just go to the other one, and it might be that it's maybe 5 minutes old, but on the next scroll it will catch up. So I think it's simple enough to do, and it would be awesome to have that possibility in there. So that's the only major thing that I'll say that we do have in Mongo, for example, that we use a lot, and it's great. It just works. So other than that, you're right. Just spin it, start using it. What comes out of the box is pretty good, right? So
first, I think pain points weren't really there. That's probably an interesting statement because actually, it was very easy for us to achieve feature parity. That was the first and biggest win by far for us. Going on forward, I think there will be likely some things to be discovered, things not quite there. But I think so far the prognosis is looking very good. So certainly, obviously, thinking that we've made the right choice. There are some things which we thought would probably be easier. So, for example, in terms of spinning up SolrCloud on AWS, it took a while in reading what should you be doing to spin up an instance to actually get your configuration working. We were very lucky that we had a fixed number of instances to work with. But having been involved with other projects where you don't know how much capacity you're going to have to deal with, I think that's obviously a particular pain point that might hit some people. Other than that, I think, I've already mentioned a lot of things earlier on, so I don't want to repeat myself.
Okay. Next question. What was the most compelling reason you had to upgrade to SolrCloud? What was it the replication? You could do with Solr before, you could do master-slave replication. It couldn't do NRT very well. The failover wasn't automatic. What was the specific reasons that you're using SolrCloud rather than the old style?
Totally NRT. So that's the reason why we decided actually to switch to the dev branch without even waiting for SolrCloud 4 to be in beta. And we've been using that for 1 year basically before it finally came up this summer as beta and then being released like a few weeks ago. That totally changed the quality of the application itself. So at that point, we were finally able to deliver in near real time, doing the indexing without having to be afraid of the application potentially crashing or to trim the speed at which we were receiving document from the faucet. So yeah, near real time is definitely the future for us, and that paid off.
Tim?
Yeah, for us, it's sort of the high availability on indexing, so no single point of failure on indexing. We have a pipeline, kind of our central pipeline that does enrichment on the data and then sends it to Solr. And if that goes offline, like it throws off everything. So we definitely needed to keep on trucking there. We're also in Amazon, and servers go down, and we have to plan for that. So the ability to actually manage a Solr cluster, making that easy. We don't have a dedicated team. I mean, it's like developers, and we also are ops guys, so we do both. We do it all. So making that easy and clear and simple without having to kind of, manually steer the ship, so to speak, that was big for us. And then we're actually not using near real time yet, but that's definitely in our plans is to speed up, our indexing frequency. So one thing is we're very bursty. We'll go a couple hours without doing much, and then slam Solr with thousands of messages per second, and then quiet down a bit. And so just raw performance of the indexing and all that process, also really attracted us to upgrading.
It was definitely the high availability. I mean, we would not go into production with something that have a single point of failure. I mean, we cannot afford that. So, so that was a key component of it, and be able to shard, right? Because I said it was, although that kind of existed. I think one of the things that will be interesting is today we're having to put a map and a proxy in front of it to do the to make the query go to the appropriate place, right? Since we're not using the document ID as the sharding key. So it will be cool to have that as a feature as well. That we don't need to do that mapping.
Right.
It will be automatic. So, but definitely high availability was the key reason.
Funny you should say that, right? So high availability again. Resilience. We were joking that the client wants gold-plated servers. Well, there was a reason. For them, an awful lot of people would have been complaining if search wasn't working. So because we have a search in place, it formed quite a lot of the user interface in terms of actual discovery of content on the site. It was important that was on. And previously we had issues whereby in threading over between sites, the old approach wasn't really up to it. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the old approach as well, because I think the second best thing that we got with SolrCloud was near real time. For us, what was happening was that we were having to merge the delta index in strings. Okay, so who knows about delta indexes and the old ways of doing things? Okay, no hands. Right, okay, so what was happening basically was that overnight we were having to reindex all the content, and it was taking us about 6 hours. 6 hours is a long time. That's obviously performance, it's not something what you want. We were able to run the entire site with having data updated in, again, near real time by patching Sphinx by actually coding ourselves manually in Ruby. But because we were doing that, we were actually maintaining a huge pile of spaghetti code It wasn't that spaghetti. At least we architected it nicely. But it was something that now you get for free. And why would you want to be investing into your own solution if you can get something that's much better maintained? It made no sense. So that's why.
If you're interacting with SolrCloud and you're using Java, you have the neat SolrJ, which can do a query to Zookeeper to find out what to do next, which server to hit. Those of you that aren't using Java, how have you been handling that? Have you gone to Zookeeper first? Have you been using your own Ruby client, or just stuck a load balancer in front?
Anyone not using the SolrJ client?
Okay, so the version that's currently in production, as I mentioned, we have been using the like the dev branch for a long while. That was out. It was set up with the sharding being manual essentially, so without using Zookeeper. So we were setting up replica and cores, and everything was orchestrated by Ruby code essentially, just using the core and the collection APIs. So yeah, it was all built in and built from scratch. Now, if we can finally make the move in production using Zookeeper as well, so the whole suite of SolrCloud elements and components, actually not sure what would be the answer, meaning that I would probably still use the Ruby API, the Ruby wrapper around the API, just because it's already there and worked and proved, and let Zookeeper handle essentially the configuration of the cluster and automatic sharding, automatic replicas and so forth.
Anyone else?
I was just going to add, I mean, we started out with just a round robin DNS type thing, and the reason I mention it is because if the doc goes to a replica, the replica knows to send it to the shard leader, which will then do. So it's kind of a, there's going to be a unnecessary trip there without it, but I think you can just round robin DNS if you don't have it. Or actually, I don't know if Ruby has a Zookeeper or other languages have a Zookeeper client, but the actual cloud Solr server's pretty thin, right? I mean, it could be ported with some effort, and I'm sure, the Solr community would love that.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, we've only worked on the Java client so far, but Zookeeper has APIs for, pretty much every popular language, and I'm hoping the Ruby client and the other clients catch up and also can talk to Zookeeper and do the same thing.
Yeah, just to mention, I'm pretty sure, around 99% sure that there is a gem, so a library for Ruby that talks to Zookeeper. It's just that I don't think it's ever been automated, the bridge between Zookeeper and Zookeeper in Solr.
Right.
So probably there's just a little step further to be taken to automate the whole thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's the case.
We put a proxy in front of it, so both on the import handler as well as on the queries, we run a cluster of Nginx with Node, and that's the guy that put that semantic intelligence, so fire the two queries in parallel. And part of that is it's mapping the client to a shard and finding out where to fire the query against, if that was the question. But everything
Alex?
goes through that proxy.
Yeah, so related, we weren't in a situation where we needed to find out because we had a direct one-to-one mapping between where the Ruby client was sitting and what it was talking to. So first, it didn't actually make sense to worry about where to go to. So not the right thing, really, in this case.
Okay, great. So yeah, I just want to go through real quick and get bottom line, key takeaway. What advice would you give to anyone else starting on SolrCloud? Would you recommend it to others? Just kind of your final thoughts.
Well, yes, totally. I would recommend it, absolutely. I would probably suggest just to start, probably Tim was mentioned already, to start from just tinker with it. Start with the example that comes with. Please change the example folder and call it server, as somebody was
I've been
suggesting.
trying.
Okay. Because it's actually a bit confusing when you see it and think maybe, okay, it's just one example, or it's actually the way to do it. It's actually amazing the way it simplifies the setting up of a cluster. So we've been doing that manually with Solar 3. It was doable. It wasn't such a pain. But seeing it working seamlessly without the need of any configuration, just a command line argument in Solar 4 was absolutely astounding.
Tim?
Yeah, no, I think definitely download it, try to upgrade, and it's been a very good experience so far. And I think the work you guys put into this, it's really showing its payoff. This is a significant milestone for solar in the community. I do think we need, and the onus is on us as well, is to beef up some of the SolrCloud kind of getting started docs in the wiki and that kind of thing, which I'm hoping to add some of that. But because I feel like when you first look at SolrCloud and you see Zookeeper and you see shards and replicas, it can be a little daunting. So I would just say the key takeaway is, it really is very simple to get going with that.
Yeah, it's same thing. I think give it a try. I mean, it's a complicated software, but it's simple to use. I mean, really is. We even on the proof of concept, I would say that it was the easiest of all of them to install and get it running. And I think you're right. The charting and the replicas and all that, it seems complicated, but once you get it, it's. I mean, we've been working with Mongo for a while, and I think Mongo kind of teaches you a lot of that, right? I mean, the concepts and how to manage that, and so just use it. And I mean, we keep preaching to our clients, move to the latest release always, because you get rid of all the bugs. I mean, you get new ones, which is better, maybe. But it's always better to be on the latest because that's all most of the attention on performance, benchmarking, and testing is, right? So it's very painful to go back on the old code to fix bugs. I mean, I know that you guys probably focus mostly on the newest releases. So one more reason is just that, right? I mean, to get the latest and greatest. And it's a great piece of software. We appreciate the community effort on that.
So I'd say that playing around with it, I think, is by far the best experience you can have, because experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. And experience at the end of the day is no bad thing. It's, from our perspective, at least from my perspective, been very interesting to see how good a fit it was, even from a very small scale application to a medium scale application to big data style applications. I think that's actually really important, because if you have one single approach for dealing with the life cycle of an application, then it's much easier to scale across. And even if things do change, then you're having less impact on you. If you could actually choose, let's say, SolrCloud from the beginning and then grow with it. Obvious caveats around the number of instances that you're running, etc. aside. I'd probably also add, if you can automate that, automate your playing with it. Now, if people have been using Chef, Puppet, show of hands? Okay, well, I'd recommend looking at it, at least understanding how you can spin up, let's say, EC2 instances, put things on it, automate that. So, if you want to replicate a problem, then you've got exactly the same environment that's running on your production servers, sitting around waiting for you to do something, poke it with, and find out what solves your problem or what doesn't solve your problem. I've seen quite a lot of instances where people didn't have exactly the same environment between production and where they were testing, and that led to a lot of pain.
Yeah, I'll second that. Even in development, I found doing anything manually is always a mistake, and I end up scripting everything that I do because I know I'll be doing it again in 5 minutes, and it's really annoying to do all that by hand. But yeah, so that's it for us. A big thanks to the panel for joining me. Great info. Thanks a lot, and that's it.